Hello, and welcome to
Conway's Kitchen is some finger licking. It's an easy way to cook.
What is up, y'all? Welcome to Conway's Kitchen. Today we are making a dish with sweet potatoes, mushrooms, and a little spicy mustard Mayoili on the side. This dish is fun and versatile. It can be eaten either for breakfast or dinner with just a slight modification. Today, it's still early in the day, we're going to be making the breakfast version with a little fried egg on top. You can also modify it for a heartier, dinner time meal with a little bit of toast, maybe a side salad, maybe just more mushrooms, maybe some chicken. You can kind of make it whatever sounds good to you in the moment. I got the inspiration from this dish, or this type of dish, from when I went to Thailand, and I noticed that they didn't have a lot of meals that were quote-unquote breakfast meals. They would take a different meal, add a fried egg on top, and call it breakfast, and I was like, that's amazing. So a lot of that inspiration, try and incorporate into my own kitchen with dishes like these, where you can kind of eat them at any time of the day. Super hearty, healthy, easy to make. Let's go check it out.
Clap back and rewrite quick, cause I'm feeling sick of all the times they took a stab at me. I'm strutting by, show you my vibe, but you saw.
Okay, so we have everything here that we need to make this dish, and we want to start off by cooking the thing that is going to take the longest, which are the sweet potatoes. So we want to turn the oven on to about 425. Potatoes, I like them a little crispy, so I like to cook them on a higher heat. And we want to rinse them off and peel all the little pock marks away. But what I wanted to do first, just to get this cutting board secure, if you didn't see the video last week, a little tip to keep your cutting board from sliding around. You can take a piece of paper here, get a little wet. So get it wet, crumple it up so all that water is dispersed throughout, and you can lay it down flat. And then put your cutting board right on top. And by doing that, it'll add an extra layer of friction so I cannot move it. Next, we want to rinse these and peel off the little marks and cut the edges off. Sweet potatoes have a lot of good flavor and nutrients in their skin, so I don't want to take off too much, but I do want to locate some of the more problematic areas and peel away a little bit there. But trying to keep as much of the skin on as I can. Alright, and from there, you just want to cut these little ends off here. And we're going to roast the potatoes in halves. So we want to cut these in halves. So you want to take them long ways and just find a good axis to cut them along here. This is where it's super important to be careful because I don't have the best knife in the world and sweet potatoes are quite hearty and dense. So they can take a little bit of elbow grease. So that's why this paper towel is really nice. It keeps everything secure and safe for you so you don't cut yourself. Alright, again, probably don't want to cut along this flat side. Probably want to find the skinnier side here and cut along that axis. And not the most even cut in the world, but that should be fine. We want to put the potatoes face up, and we're just going to do a little olive oil, salt, and pepper. Potatoes aren't going to soak up all that much oil in the oven, so you really don't need a ton, or else you're going to be left with a pretty oily, soupy bottom, and it's just going to be kind of just a waste overall. Salt, you don't want anything too much, but sort of enough to cover the surface area. And pepper, similar fashion, not too much, but enough that you can rub around and cover everything. And so you can just take your hands and just kind of rub it on the face side and also on the back side as well. And when you're done, you can just leave them face down, because that is how we're going to cook them, face down. Oven is still heating, so basically we want to get everything ready for the skillet here. Cooking mushrooms with butter gives them much better flavor and texture from what I've found. I'm cooking for 2 people today, so I'm going to use a pretty big chunk of butter here. They kind of have little measurements on the side, so basically I'm adding about 1.5 tablespoons of butter to this. because part of what I have found with mushrooms is texture is a pretty big part of cooking them and making them yummy. And so adding a lot of butter, having a lid with it, it's going to keep a lot of the moisture inside the skillet for the mushrooms to cook down. We have an onion here. Take about half an onion. And we are actually going to be leaving this onion, we're going to be cutting this onion down in big strips today. So take the skin off. So skin is off. Basically, we're going to cut these how you would if you were maybe caramelizing onions. We're just going to do long strips across. I don't want to dice them up or cut them small, and that's mostly because when they cook down with the mushrooms, I want them to remain stringy so they're a bit more full, and when you go to eat them with the potatoes, you sort of get more onions in every bite, and also it's a less messy dish, because if there are a bunch of diced onions everywhere, they're going to fall off the potatoes and they're going to get hard to eat. So by keeping them in big strips, we are able to, it's just a better way to plate them and eat them with this dish that I found. But you can definitely dice them up if you'd like. So basically, similar to caramelized onions, but maybe a little thinner than you would caramelized onions. So just kind of pretty thin strips here. They are more, in this dish, complementary to the mushrooms than their own thing. Okay. Kind of just thin little strips like that. That'll sort of fall apart when we start cooking them down. Mushroom-wise, we have little baby Bella mushrooms. You can use really whatever mushrooms you prefer. And you want a good, for 2 people, good 2 solid handfuls. These mushrooms are really small, so they're going to be a little harder to figure out, but probably about, 2 handfuls like that. If you kind of break them up into like who's eating what, seems about appropriate. Mushrooms are well washed. The oven cycle just went on, so the sweet potatoes are ready to put in the oven. Basically what's going to happen, I'm going to turn the skillet on to heat up, because the potatoes take about 5 to 10-ish minutes longer than the onions and the mushrooms here. So basically we want to cook the potatoes, and then like 5 to 10 minutes later we'll start cooking the onions, and then in about 20 minutes it'll all come together. So with the mushrooms, a lot of times you can find sort of like dirty bits on the bottom. Feel free to just cut those off without trying to cut off too much of the stem, because there's still good stuff in the stem. I like eating the stems of mushrooms. Or just sometimes, you find them in the crevice like that and you just need a little bit more washing. And with the mushrooms, what we're going to do is take all the stems off. And as you're doing that, I like to keep my mushrooms in big chunks. So these mushrooms are actually pretty small, but we're basically just going to cut them in half. I have found that with mushrooms, for my personal tastes, I like them to be cooked a lot, but I don't like them to be cooked so much that they just turn into rubber. So I have found that by keeping them in bigger chunks, you're able to cook them down a lot and get a nice texture and flavor on them without having the texture turn super weird and rubbery. So keeping big chunks of mushrooms, whatever kind of mushrooms you're using, is probably pretty key here. Looks like the butter is ready, nice and hot. You can hear it kind of sizzling. Butter does a good job letting you know when it's nice and warmed up. So we're going to add all of the mushrooms and onions here. And we're going to give them a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, stir it around a little bit, and put that lid back on. We want to keep both onions and mushrooms have a lot of moisture in them, so we want to try and keep as much of that moisture in the pan as possible with the butter, and then it kind of cooks down in its own juices. Want to get rid of some of those bigger chunks of onions, but everything will start to spread out and fall apart as it cooks down more. So, alright, got those nice and spread out. Some salt and pepper in there. Next thing we're going to do is cut down some garlic. Probably just a couple cloves, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're really garlic heavy, but you don't want to make everything taste too garlicky. It's more to just kind of bring out some of the other flavors. This garlic's a little weird. I think it maybe had too much moisture in its root or something like that, because it's not the prettiest garlic in the world, but we'll make it work. So with the garlic here, just take your knife and hold it sideways, and then you smash the garlic like that, and the skin will kind of come off a little bit. So just smash all those, and then from there, the skin kind of just peels itself off.
What I wouldn't give to make peace, cauterize a wound, it won't bleed.
They are peeled. So from there, we're gonna mince them down, cut them down real small. Fluid motions here, kind of a little saw back and forth, keeping it going. And you're moving the knife. You don't want to move your food like you're putting it through a conveyor belt or anything like that. You want to move the knife, because if you move the food, you're probably going to cut your hand. You want to make sure you're being safe and careful with all the stuff that you're doing, because knives are sharp. It only takes one little motion to ruin your day. Even that, like, I probably shouldn't even have that sitting there, because it's just another obstacle in my way that can get in front of the blade and then make the blade change directions. We don't want that. Okay. So, nice and minced down. About 2.5 cloves of garlic there, which we are going to add to the sauté onions and mushrooms in just a second here. We want to let everything cook down just a little bit more, and then we're going to flip it over, and when we flip it is when we're going to add the garlic. That is it on the chopping. So besides monitoring what's going on with the sauté here and what's in the oven, the last thing we really need to do is make the sauce. It's not the most traditional aioli sauce, but it's a good creamy additive to a lot of different dishes, and it's one of those types of things where you can sort of mix and match the flavors to make whatever you want. And I have found that I like the combinations of mustardy things with mushrooms. So that's why we're going to make a little spicy mustard Mayoili today. Before we get into that though, I do want to check on the sauté here. So we got a lot of the juices. Yeah, a lot of the juices cooking down here. Flip those around. Alright, this is a good time to add the garlic and also thyme. A lot of seasonings, I'd say this, a lot of spices you kind of want to wait towards the end to add them, but thyme is one that's pretty hearty and you can cook it down pretty early on in your meal. This is a little too much, I'm going to put a little bit back, but you want a decent pinch. A little bit of thyme there, the garlic's in there, just want to spread it around, get it nice and distributed throughout, maybe break up this onion a bit. Alright, and gotta make sure you put that lid back on, keep all those juices in there. The potato in the oven should be good. We're basically gonna wait until it's a little charred, a little crispy, and then we're gonna flip it over. Alright, so with our Mayoili sauce, we want to start with mayo. This sauce will save, so if you make a little too much, don't worry about it. You can keep it for a few days. It's a good, like, kind of drizzle on top / dipping sauce, so a pretty liberal amount. Mayo isn't the most flavorful thing, so you gotta kind of add a lot to the mayo to make it flavorful. You got mayo here. A tiny bit of apple cider vinegar, just a little dollop, just to kind of give it a little lift, a little tang. We got our classic French yellow mustard here, French's yellow mustard here. You can use Dijon mustard, you can use stone ground mustard, whatever mustard you like will work. And It's a mustard aioli, so we want a good amount. Probably looks about maybe 2 tablespoons or so. And another ingredient, I am using this mango habanero hot sauce. You can use whatever hot sauce you like. I like this one. The mango gives a nice fruitiness to it. Really helps bring out a lot of good flavors there. So we're going to be using this. It's also got quite the kick to it. So got fruity and spicy. So it's an interesting hot sauce that I've been adding to a lot of different things. It's organic, so you can find it at any Safeway. The last thing we're going to add is some lime juice. Yeah, we're going to add a good amount of lime juice. You want a good amount of tang to it. So if this is half, there's a little bit cut off from this other half, so we're looking at about 2/3 of that half is what we're going to be using. Just kind of squeeze that down. So we have mayo, apple cider vinegar, lime, mustard, hot sauce, and the last thing we're going to add is pepper. You can also add like garlic powder, chili powder at this point. You can add a lot of different seasonings to start bringing out certain flavors, depending on what you're making. But for now, this is a good base thing. And it looks a little funky, no doubt, but once we stir it up, it'll be really good. And now let's stir it together. Try a little bit of it. A little mustardy, a little spicy, a little tangy, a little zingy. Perfect. This is what we want. And this isn't going to be a necessary component to this dish, but it really helps bring everything together. And it can be a little bland without it. So if you don't like this sort of mustard Mayoili kind of thing, you could potentially add just like plain mustard or, ketchup or just hot sauce, generally speaking. But you probably want to add a little bit of a liquidy. You want to add some sort of sauce with this dish. Just keeping an eye on our saute here. Nice and liquidy, which is just what we want. We want the mushrooms and onions to sort of cook themselves down in the sauce. Just want to kind of stir it around a little bit just so nothing burns at the bottom here. But it is looking good. It's looking pretty close here. And what I'm actually going to do, and this is a pretty optional step, I'm going to add a little bit of chili powder to this whole thing. Kind of bring out some smokiness to it all. Will go well with the sweet potato that we have in the oven. So just a little bit of chili powder there. Put that lid back on. Maybe give it a little shake or so, just so it kind of works its way around. And we will also check on the potatoes here. So pulling these out, checking what it looks like on the underside. Want to flip it over? Yeah, they're looking nice and charred there. Or not charred. They're looking nice and toasty. Not black, but a good brown toast onto them. So that's a good point to flip them over and put them back in the oven. Those are just a few minutes out. This is just a few minutes out. So what you want to do next, we got our sauce ready. You want to get the eggs ready. You can do scrambled eggs. We're going to do fried eggs today. I have a little egg pan here. I put a little bit of coconut oil down in there. You can add butter. Olive oil can be a little funky with eggs, but basically I don't like to cook with too much butter, so this is sort of my approach on a healthy alternative. I would say these are basically done. You can definitely try them to sort of see where the texture level is at, but these onions are looking pretty translucent here. The mushrooms are starting to brown just slightly on the faces that they're getting cooked on. So this is super close, and it is a little soupy, but that is good because sweet potatoes can be pretty dry and need some sort of condiment with them. So natural juices here, we got our sauce here, we're gonna have a little egg yolk there, and that's really gonna add a lot of flavor and texture to the potatoes. Complements them very nicely. Since everything's basically ready, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to turn the oven off and leave the potatoes in. Want to keep them hot until we're ready to plate them. With the fried egg here in the back, we want to turn it to medium, maybe a little bit above medium heat. Coconut oil has a really high smoke point, so it can take a lot of heat. Also with fried eggs, you want to do a sort of hot, fast approach as opposed to scrambled eggs, which is not as hot, a little bit slower. So we're going to heat that up. We're going to make sure our overhead fan is on to collect all that stuff coming out of there. And once that's hot, then we'll start frying down those eggs and plating everything. The oil for the egg is hot. You can see a little bit of smoke coming out of there. So basically, I want to make sure all the food is ready for the eggs. Eggs are always going to be last. So we take our hot potatoes out of the oven, and we'll leave them on the plate. Potatoes have this amazing ability to retain heat, so we can have them on the plate for a couple minutes while the eggs are cooking, and they still should be hot for us. And we got our nice saute here, onions and mushrooms. And basically, gonna crack one of these eggs. Sizzle pop, compost the shell. Right. And so we want to try and split this up into two. Make sure we turn off our burners. And you want to kind of push the sweet potatoes together, and basically you're just going to try and put them in between there, almost like they're like a little boat, a little sweet potato boat. And we're just going to drizzle that right in the middle there. All right. And they're ready. We got our egg here. I'll flip it. You can cook it as however you want. If you want a little runny, take it off pretty soon. Less runny, leave it on a little bit. We want to leave this a little runny. I like mine about over medium. And we have their sauce here. The last little thing, just a little garnish here. Last thing, just some smoked paprika. Just add on top of the egg. All right. Egg should be cooked. You can always press the center a little bit, and you want a little bit of little jelly action in there, but nothing too jelly. You want to feel a little bit of firmness if you want an over medium. And we got the egg going in the middle there. Take your smoked paprika. Just do a couple little boop, 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 boop. There's that. So what we want to do here, from here you can drizzle on. You can dip into the sauce, or you can just kind of drizzle it on top here. So we're going to drizzle it on top, and it'll be a nice spicy, mustardy, tangy sauce to go with our mushrooms, onions, sweet potato, fried egg breakfast we got here. Let's eat.
I'm so damn afraid of heights that it takes my might to try and join you. And you drink effervescently, I'll savor it. Oh, love of my life, oh my darling, a gift you are to my life. On your hips,
Focusing in on the fried egg here. You want to find a hard surface. You want to find a hard surface. Take your egg and you want to bash it into it, but you don't want to break the egg on top of everything. So a good sort of firm, quick snap there, and then take the egg and you want to pull it apart and sort of up as you do it, because if you press your fingers into it, you might pop the yolk. So you want to keep the yolk here, and you only want to flip it once. So you want to allow this side to cook as much as you want it to cook overall, and then you're just going to give it a flip, and then once you flip it, then that's when you're going to control your yolk consistency. If you want it over easy, just flip it, wait a couple seconds, it'll cook a little bit on the other side, and then you can put it on the plate. If you want it over medium, you're probably going to want to wait another, 20 to 30 seconds maybe, depending on, how you're cooking it, what you're cooking it in. It's all going to sort of change. So the more eggs you cook, the better you'll get at figuring out how to cook the eggs the way you like it. So it's a little stuck at the bottom, but if you shake it around, it kind of pried itself loose there. And you're starting to see it's kind of bubbling up on the side here. That means it's starting to get kind of crispy and cooked pretty thoroughly on that side. So we're gonna flip this thing pretty soon here. And with flipping, it's just going to be a solid motion. It's really all about confidence and knowing that you might ruin your egg, and that's okay. Confidence. You just don't want to second guess it. Just like taking a math test, just go with your first answer. I like mine over medium, so we're going to leave this on a little bit longer. Nothing too long though. Alright, should be about done. You can always test it by just kind of poking your finger in there. It's a little jiggly, a little wiggly, but not very much so. If it was really jiggly, really wiggly, probably need a little bit more time. If it was really hard, then that would probably be a little too much. So a little jiggly, a little wiggly in there, probably about the right amount. And we're just going to finish it off with a little smoked paprika, a little garnish here. Just kind of adds a little smoky flavor to it. Check out this yolk. Boom. Yolk.